for me, it just feels like it's always been this goal that had never been reached. So for me, this year we're going to hit it and exceed it. But um, in my mind, it was just like something that hadn't been completed yet, and I was going to keep working until I got there.
I think you'll find that once you hit that $1 million goal, you'll realize that it's just the base of the mountain.
Yep,
It's not the peak.
1,000%, my man.
Welcome to the Painter Growth Podcast, where we help you scale your painting company in record time. Join us as we explore sales, marketing, hiring, finances, leadership, and more, everything that you need to know to scale and grow your painting business. I hope you enjoy and subscribe.
Yeah, no doubt. What's up, everybody? Michael Hickman here, founder of paintergrowth.com, and you're listening to a painter growth story on the Painter Growth Podcast. I have my friend and client for almost a year now, I think, maybe a bit longer, Mr. Evan Simmons, hailing from Denver, Colorado. What's up, Evan? Good to have you, man.
I'm doing good. Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, stoked to hear about your recent wins, and I want to dive into those. But before we dive into those, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm Evan Simmons, like Mike mentioned. I run a company called Panoramic Pro Painting. We're based here out of like Denver, Colorado. We kind of serve the Denver metro area, residential / commercial, interior, exterior, cabinet refinishing. And we'll be coming up on our 5-year anniversary in business this upcoming month. So it's been a good ride so far.
Awesome. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your business before you found Painter Growth? What was it like?
Yeah, well, I found Painter's Growth. It's been about a year, like Mike mentioned. And prior to that, I was still running, had only been in business for about 2.5, 3 years. So, still learning a lot. I was kind of running the business myself, doing all the sales. And I had a production manager that was kind of helping me with production kind of at the time. But, juggling a lot of, I guess, hats, so to speak. Lots of responsibility, was kind of doing all the sales while kind of coordinating production and overseeing that while, obviously trying to grow the business and marketing and all the things that come with it. So I felt like I was in a position where, things were good. I was, and I guess a lot of people's minds, successful at that point. But I just realized that, there was a long way to go with my business, and that ultimately my goal was to kind of remove myself from the day-to-day of the business.
I just knew there was a point essentially where, things were good. We were selling jobs. We were profitable. We were starting to kind of grow our exposure. However, I was doing a lot of the work, and I just knew that ultimately, that's why I didn't sign up to start a business to, have a full-time 60 or 70 hour a week job. That ultimately I was looking for freedom, and knowing that I was kind of in a place where, it still required a lot of me, like, being involved in the sales, overseeing production, just kind of showed me that, there was more levels to it, and that ultimately I still needed to continue to grow to ultimately get the business where I wanted it to go.
And did we, what did you end up producing in 2022? So not last year, but the year before.
Yeah, the year before we ended at 650K.
Okay, cool. Now, what made you decide that you wanted to look for outside help to kind of speed up the process of this growth rather than just trying to figure it out yourself?
Yeah, well, it was honestly kind of a crisis mode. I'm not sure if you remember how this all kind of kicked off, but last year I went to the Blast Off event that Drip Jobs and Tanner Mullen kind of put on. And you were a featured speaker. And literally the week before that event, I had lost my production manager, who had been with me for a little over 2 years. And so not only was, my business growing, and we, were just kicking off our kind of busy season, but then I also was down kind of my key employee that I had prior to. So I think I was just kind of grasping. I just knew, like, hey, things are off here. Like, you got to adjust, but I wasn't sure really where to start. So I think, hearing you speak at that event, and then, we had a kickoff call, and, just seeing the platform and essentially how you guys worked, I just saw a lot of value in it. And I felt like there was a lot of things that, I was doing, just based off of, I guess this previous experience and just had doing what had worked in the past, but knowing that a lot of stuff that I was doing could probably be, changed up and created to just be more effective. So I think seeing all that kind of attracted me to the program and is why I signed up initially.
Cool. So it's probably is almost a year ago now. So you have your call, you chat with my team, you decide to join. Do you remember like what happened over the first few months? What were like the first things that you dove into that you needed to kind of work on initially?
Yeah. Well, I think right away I just hopped into the modules. Um, I was going through kind of a transition period in life as well. So, I was really every day hopping out, getting my workout in very early in the morning, and I started just watching the modules. And I think the one that will always kind of stick out to me, that was the first one that really, kind of had that epiphany moment or the light bulb went off, was the selling on the spot, right? Like making sure that you're presenting your bid on the spot. So for literally 3 years prior to that, I would always go take my dimensions, take my pictures, and tell that customer or client, like, hey, I'll get a bid back to you, within the next 48 hours. Um, and so right away, I was like, hey, this is a little abnormal, but like that makes sense, right? Like presenting in front of the customer, you'll have an opportunity to answer questions, to get feedback, just to kind of clarify your proposal, and then also, not having to take the homework home, right? I know how prior to that, how sometimes I would go home and there'd be 4 or 5 estimates stacked up, and it's like, all right, I'm going to spend a good 2 hours or so writing estimates. So I said, hey, like I'm going to try this out. And literally the very next job I went to, I took the time to go present, went back to my car, ultimately wrote the bid, presented to the customer on the spot, and they signed on the spot. And then I said, wow, like this works. And I think that was the first thing that kind of really was like, all right, like they're up to something here. They're teaching some good stuff. Like, let me see what else they have. And so, from there was just really listening to a lot of the modules. I would go to every, Tuesday call, which I saw as really valuable and was a great way to kind of network, but also, hear from others and gain experience on what others were doing and what was helping. So those are the things that I think stuck out to me right from the get-go, were like the modules, and then the peer interaction and the kind of weekly mastermind calls I thought were pretty cool and brought a lot of value.
That's awesome, man. Definitely some valuable nuggets there. Now, I know you went through a few ups and downs along the way because not every path is a direct line. But let's look at right now. So what did you end up with? While we're talking numbers, what did you end up with in 2023 for total revenue? So 650, 2022.
Yeah.
2023 was
Yeah, 850.
850. Okay, solid growth. And then what are you trending now so far for 2024?
Yeah, so our goal is 1.2 million this year, and we're on pace um, right now. Honestly, exceeding that pace a little bit. So, yeah, obviously growing pains with that as well. Like I've kind of grown out my team, and I'm not doing all the estimates anymore, which is a little different this year, and just realizing that that on this journey, kind of no matter what role you have within the business, that like it always evolves and there's always additional responsibilities or things that need to be done. So even though I've removed myself from, you know, doing the estimating, that role looks a lot different as far as playing CEO and being out in front of things, being proactive with our marketing and, just hopping into different arenas that in the past I just wouldn't have the opportunity to do.
Mhm. Now, now that you've kind of seen this, you've had this development and you've been working with us for a bit and you have all this momentum, how do you feel about, the future of your business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited about it. I think I've realized this year too that like, you can only go so far by yourself, and then it ultimately comes down to the team that you surround yourself with. So, putting a lot of credence in there, putting a lot of, um, I guess, responsibility on myself to make sure that, we're hiring for the right people, putting the right people in the right seats. And then ultimately, being able to develop, those people, being able to kind of incentivize those people to continue to grow within their positions and within the company. So super excited, just knowing that, marathon, not a sprint, right? That it is kind of long-term thinking. It is big picture. So just, you know, I guess back in the day, or so to speak, I would be, you know, more of like, hey, what works right now? You know, and I think a lot of times I was doing temporary stopgaps or putting things in place that weren't really long term. So now it's just a way bigger picture kind of mindset, you know, knowing that, you know, it really is a marathon and not a sprint, and that, you know,
Hmm.
if you're in it for the long haul, then you got to take the time to do those small things and allow those things to kind of add up, as opposed to, you know, trying to find that short-term solution that might give you relief for a month or two, but ultimately kind of, you know, once that, you know, time lapses, you're right back in the same spot. So really just making decisions that are kind of long-term and thought out, as opposed to temporary, hey, just get me by type things.
Yep. Now you're already doing about 50K per month when you, like, before you even joined with us. By a lot of people's metrics, that would, you know, that would be classified as a successful business. And a lot of people would just be, you know, happy living there, you know, making 10K per month profit for the rest of their life, right? Or as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you decide that something needed to change? Why not just like be happy with that growth and be satisfied?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think for me, ultimately, it became like, you know, it's less about the money. For me, you know, starting out the company, right? Like, obviously, I know I needed to make enough money to support my family and to live comfortably. And, you know, I know that obviously the world revolves around money, so you have to have it. But for me, starting the company and like now scaling the company is a lot more for me about the challenge of actually doing it, like setting out, you know, on something and being able to see it come to fruition, knowing that all the work and the energy and the time that it takes. So, like I mentioned, I'll be coming up on 5 years now. And yeah, you know, we live comfortably. We're good. The family's good, you know. Um, so it's not like I'm going to work tomorrow to make sure I have a paycheck. However, it's really important to me, I think, just naturally being kind of a competitive person, and, you know, someone that wants to, you know, excel at whatever I'm doing. No matter where I'm planted, I want to kind of excel and be good at it. So I think that this natural drive in me is like, okay, that was great. You know, making 650 that year was great. You know, doing 850 last year was awesome. But, you know, ultimately, can you do more? Can you push it?
Mhm.
Can you scale it? Can you like get out your own way and, you know, bring somebody else in and focus on training them and empowering them, to get better, so that it frees you up to do more of the other stuff that, you know, maybe is being missed or has never been approached. So for me, it's just that consistent kind of need to be challenged and pushed. And ultimately, I think that's what kind of keeps me going, is that it never feels like it's done. And then the big thing, honestly, is that $1 million in revenue. Like when I started out the company, that was always that big shiny number, right? That everybody talks about, like $1 million in revenue, right? Like you're not official until you do $1 million in revenue. And I'm not sure if that's ever been said, but in my mind, that was always, hey, I want to grow this business until we're $1 million plus in revenue.
Yeah.
So for me, it just feels like it's always been this, you know, this goal that had never been reached. So for me, you know, this year we're going to hit it and exceed it. But um, in my mind, it was just like something that hadn't been completed yet, and I was going to keep working until
I
I got.
think I think you'll find that once you hit that $1 million goal, you'll realize that it's just the base of the mountain.
Yep,
It's not the peak.
1,000%, my man. I know that for sure. And so again, wherever we end up this year, I know that next year, all my mindset will be, okay, well, we can, you know, exceed that,
Let's
right?
go for
So
two.
yeah, right. Why, you know, if we finish at 1-3, it's going to be like we can do 1-5 or we can do two,
Yeah.
right? So I just think it's that kind of never satisfied mentality, and, you know, that's a, you know, a pro and a con. That's not always a good thing. And I've had to learn to kind of celebrate the wins a little bit more. You know, take the
Yeah.
time to like actively enjoy the ride, as opposed to always looking for the next milestone. But yeah, again, just my personality is one where if I kind of set out to accomplish something, then I'm going to keep working until I kind of
Yeah.
get
It's an infinity game. There's no end, right?
there. Yep.
I have an interesting question for you. So as a, you know, I would say a bigger, you know, quote unquote, bigger painting business, um, other than those like specific tactics that you mentioned, what do you feel are like the takeaways or like the big things that you get from your coaching with Painter Growth?
Yeah, I would think honestly, just that like honest feedback and another perspective, another set of eyes. I feel like entrepreneurs, right? We're like so, immersed in our businesses and, thinking about our businesses like day in and day out that sometimes we have the tendency to get tunnel vision or really feel, really feel like we have the plan figured out and that, it's going to go well from there. But what I'm realizing, having a coach, not only the accountability aspect that kind of keeps you, you know, doing what you say you're going to do, but I think also just that other perspective, right? Like somebody that can bounce ideas off of you, somebody that can like hear you out, hear what you're thinking, but then also based on their experience, be able to say, "Hey, I like that," or "Hey, have you thought about maybe doing it this way?" So I just think, having somebody solid that you can really bounce ideas off of, and also hold you accountable to, do the things that you commit to doing, I think are important. And, I think the saying is like everybody has a coach, right? Anybody successful has a coach, right? So I just think it's really been an awesome experience. And good to have somebody that's there to kind of walk the journey with me, so to speak, and be able to bounce ideas and kind of help along those lines. So I would say that's the biggest benefit so far.
What would you say to someone who's considering signing up with us, but maybe is scared about investing into their business? They feel like they'd rather keep that money or spend it on something else.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing I think a big lesson I've learned is in business, you got to spend money to make money first off. And then it'll come back to you as well, right? So I think I've, I grew up in a middle class family and, never, I guess, needed for anything, but there was still kind of that ingrained in me that, you got to work hard for what you're going to get. Um, and, because of that, I think early in my career, I was opposed to like, really investing or spending that much money, just not knowing if it was going to come back. And as I've gotten further down the line in entrepreneurship and just running my business, you just start to see kind of the cyclical nature of the business and how, money comes and money goes, right? So you have to be, comfortable, not hoarding it, but being able to see it as an investment, knowing that you're going to get the return, and even just one little piece of knowledge or one, thing that you can implement in your business could make a dramatic difference and get you the return on investment. So I would say that if somebody's out there is like really flying solo and is, just not sure on those next steps, or thinks they have a pretty good idea, but doesn't have anybody or a mentor or anybody really to bounce those ideas off of, I think having a coach is huge and has been very, very big for my business.
Awesome. Do you I'm not sure, do you participate much in the community, the group calls or the Slack community?
Yeah, so the group calls, like I mentioned earlier, were always very, very huge for me. Due to a commitment I've had this first quarter of 2024, I haven't been able to attend those as much as I'd like, but I still get immense value from it. And then, yeah, the Slack community is something too that, I think is beneficial and helpful. I feel like I probably could be a little bit more involved, but I think even being a fly in the wall in those type of rooms can be very helpful and beneficial. So, I encourage people to be active, right? And the more you can bring, the more you'll get. But also, there's a lot of value in, just having a very diverse community of people that are doing it, but doing it in different ways. So just being able to kind of see some of the conversations and advice that gets passed on in there, I think has been helpful.
I love it. And now with all these two more questions actually. What's your current role in your painting business?
My role now in the business is primarily, it's honestly all over the place. I feel like I fill gaps daily, right? So I'm not the primary estimator, but if we get overloaded with estimates, I'm picking up those overloads. I kind of still oversee production, in that I'm kind of help coordinating production and setting our schedule. A lot more one-to-one meetings, a lot more business-to-business networking, a lot more, I guess, investment in the marketing kind of component of the business and setting things up there. So I would say that, I'm not in the field as much, right? A lot of my work can be done from my home office. However, I think there's that kind of thought like, oh, well, if you're not in the field, right, you don't have much going on. And like literally, on Tuesdays, I'm in meetings from, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., like
I
literally
don't
at
understand.
home. Yeah, not able to like go grab a break or grab lunch. Like things get hectic. So, long story short, it looks different in that I'm not driving all over the place. However, I feel like my schedule is just as busy or busier than it's ever been, just with responsibilities that are on my plate.
Yeah. And that's, I guess, removing some of those is next. It's a never ending game, like you said.
Never ending. Never
Yeah.
ending.
And how do you feel about the future of your business?
Yeah, I'm stoked about it, man. Like I said, we're on pace to, have our biggest year ever. Um, we've never walked into a spring like this year where we've had so much work already booked out. And, we were always that company that we go to estimates and people would say, oh, how far are you booked out? And we were never more than like 2 or 3 weeks booked out. But, now going to customers and, it's literally like the 9th or 10th day of May. And, we have customers asking how far we're booked out. And I'm telling them like late June, early July, right? Depending on the type of project. So
Yeah.
just one of those where, yeah, man, sky's the limit. I think that there's so much additional opportunity out there. I feel like being removed from the day to day and not being so immersed in it has allowed me to kind of see the bigger picture overall, be more strategic, and also kind of start tapping into like, those next steps, like those next areas, those next markets that we want to really kind of dive into. So, long story short, I think that the sky's the limit. And like you mentioned earlier, right? I think we'll hit a number this year and then I'll right away say, okay, well, we could do this next year. So, yeah, man, I'm just ready to kind of continue pushing it and building it, to just make it the best business I can. Not really a dollar threshold or a number I'm looking at, more that I just want to create a business that has an amazing reputation in our community, that serves our community, that takes care of our clients. And I feel like, we have that now, but I feel like there's still a lot more work to be done.
Love it, man. Well, your inspiration, and stoked to see you again at the next mastermind in October.
Yes, sir.
Better be
Awesome.
there.
I appreciate you, brother.
All right. Thanks, Evan.
All right.
Thanks for listening to the Painter Growth Podcast. If you want to grow your painting business, go to www.paintergrowth.com or click on the top link in the description. Talk soon.